Hey everybody, this is Bob Kovacs here at Wirefly with another Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. And on the left we have the Samsung Epic 4G Touch. This is the Samsung Galaxy S2 phone that runs on Sprint's 4G WiMAX network. On the right we have the HTC Rezound with Beats audio built into the phone. This runs on Verizon's 4G LTE network. Folks, these are probably the two most powerful phones available in the US today. Very interesting, very powerful, a lot of fun. They have a lot of features. Interestingly, they have a lot of things in common, so let's get going with the Schmackdown. Now, both of these phones, for instance, have dual-core processors running at faster than 1 gigahertz. It's 1.2 gigahertz for the Samsung, 1.5 gigahertz dual-core processor. For the Rezound, they have two different kind of processors, so you can't really compare the speeds by comparing gigahertz with this, with gigahertz for that. In my gut seat of the pants reaction, the processor in the Samsung phone is maybe a little faster. The phone feels a little faster than the Rezound. Not that the Rezound feels anything other than very fast. It's a very fast phone. Both of these phones have 1 gigabyte of RAM for the processor. They both have 16 gigabytes of built-in storage. They both have micro SD card slots for memory expansion. The Rezound comes with a 16 gigabyte micro SD card loaded in that slot. So out of the box, you get 32 gigabytes of storage in the Rezound. The micro SD slot in the Epic 4G Touch is empty. So you only get 16 gigabytes out of the box for the Epic 4G Touch. Pow! We got a knockout there. Pretty close to a knockout from the Rezound against the Epic 4G Touch. In terms of overall out-of-the-box storage, you get twice the storage in the Rezound. That's storage for your files, for photos, videos, anything else you want to store, music on your phone. Much more storage out of the box. Of course, you can expand the storage in the Epic 4G Touch by putting a micro SD card into that slot. And you can put up to a 32 gig in here. You can put up to a 32 gig here. So they could both end up with the same 48 gig, of storage space. But the fact is that out of the box, the Rezound has a lot more. So that takes the memory round. Now, they both have 8 megapixel rear cameras. They both can take 1080p HD video. But here's an interesting twist. They both have front cameras as well. Here's the front camera on the Rezound. There's the front camera on the Samsung. Now the front camera, they're both 2 megapixel front cameras, but you can shoot video with the front camera on the Rezound. In fact, you can shoot 720p HD video. In fact, I think it is the first phone sold in the US that allows you to shoot HD video from the front camera. Now you cannot shoot video from the front camera. At least I couldn't figure out how to shoot video from the front camera on the Epic 4G Touch. Of course, you can shoot stills and you can do video chat with it. You can do video chat with both of them, but you can't shoot video while you can shoot, for what it's worth, HD video with the front camera on the Rezound. Now, both of these have LED flashes. So there's just many things they have in common. They both have Android 2.3.4. I mentioned that they're both 4G phones. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Of course, push these two phones together and you can see that there's something going on with the displays. The Epic 4G Touch has got a 4.5-inch display with a resolution of 480 by 800 pixels, while the Rezound has a 4.3-inch display with a resolution of 720 by 1280 pixels. This is the first phone in the US sold with 720p native display resolution. In fact, this has a higher resolution, a higher pixels per inch than the famous iPhone Retina display. So this is sharper and clearer than the Retina display. Now this is an LCD display on the Rezound. This is a Super AMOLED Plus display on the Epic 4G Touch. And as I have both of these together, look at the relative size of the objects on the screen. For instance, here's the Smart Bench icon. There's the Smart Bench icon. There's Quadrant. Here's Quadrant. The icons are much bigger and easier to read on the Epic 4G Touch, that's because the screen, interestingly enough, has fewer pixels. So if that icon is, let's say, 50 pixels tall, 50 pixels is a certain size on this display, but 50 pixels is much smaller on this display over here because the pixels are smaller. So if you like things bigger, then maybe the Epic 4G Touch is a little better phone for you than the Rezound, which presents things smaller. But I'm in a quandary here. I've mentioned many times that I like the Super AMOLED displays, especially the Super AMOLED Plus display. I really do. But I've also mentioned many times that I like higher resolution. So I think what we have here is a win in this round. The display round is going to go to the Rezound because of the Rezound's outstanding resolution. When you have something that's shot in an HD video format and you play it on the Rezound, the clarity is just outstanding. Now it plays pretty good on the Epic 4G Touch as well, but the Rezound, the clarity is just outstanding. While we're on the subject of things like video, well, what about the audio? Now, the Samsung Epic 4G Touch has got more or less the standard audio features. It makes a good audio player. Now, the Verizon HTC Rezound comes with Beats audio integrated into the system. There's the Beats logo on the back, and it has the Beats audio integrated into the system, and it comes with a pair of iBeats earphones. These are earphones that cost $70, $80, $90, and they come out of the box with the Rezound. So now the Epic 4G Touch, in its favor, is a lot less expensive than the Rezound, but it's not that less expensive. So I'm going to give the audio round in favor of the Rezound. So the Rezound is starting to kind of build up round after round here. Now, what about battery life? I've used both of these phones quite a bit, and I find that the battery life is more or less about the same. But there's one thing in favor, I think, of the Epic 4G Touch, and that is we all know that running a 4G network is consuming of the battery. It really can help wear down your battery quickly. If you're doing a lot of interaction with a 4G network, and it doesn't matter which of these phones you're on, it's going to help to draw down the battery quickly. Now with the Epic 4G Touch, all you have to do is go to the notification bar and you can turn off your 4G like that. Unfortunately, the Rezound doesn't have anything like that. You've got some interesting icons up here, but basically you've got to go deep into the settings. I'm going to go into the settings here. You've got to go deep into the settings to turn off the 4G. You've got to go all the way into network mode and press the CDMA only, and now it turns off the 4G. Well, that's kind of several button pushes, key presses that you have to remember to do. So I'm going to give that toggle capability, that's a slight advantage that we have here in favor of the Epic 4G Touch. So I'm going to go to the Epic 4G Touch with that. It's a little easier to turn off the 4G, and I think that's going to help you save the battery. If you're not actively using the 4G, you can turn it off more easily on the Epic 4G Touch than you can on the Rezound. So we've talked about a bunch of different things so far. I really like the version of HTC Sense that's on the Rezound. It allows you to go around and around and around and around in the same direction, and you've all heard me talk about this. And of course you can do that barrel roll where you spin it around and it comes back to the page where you started. So that's a really cool, fun aspect. I like the flip clock. Of course, the Epic 4G Touch has got a big clock at the top. It's a very nice, attractive clock and a nice, thin, attractive font. And of course, it's a weather widget as well. You've got your weather there. But with the version of Android here, this is actually Samsung's overlaid the Android 2.3. And you get to the end and you can't go any further and you have to go back. We've got some cool widgets here, by the way. I've got a news widget going right there. So as you've seen, both of these phones work very smoothly with their fast processors. There are lots of RAM, and they're very smooth overall operation and Android integration. So where do we go from here? Now, I took some pictures with both of these cameras. I don't want to do an extensive photo examination, but let's go ahead and take a look at the flesh tone pictures that I took with both of these cameras. Now, here's the picture that I took took with the Epic 4G Touch. That's Luis on the left and Jen on the right. And the photo came out. Now, I used the automatic settings for both of these pictures from both phones. And the Epic 4G Touch picture, as you see it here, is kind of blue. That's from the flash. So the flash left their faces a little blue looking. Now, compared to the Rezound is maybe a little dark, but I like the flesh tone of the Rezound better. I think it made a better picture with these two faces than the Epic 4G Touch is. So I'm going to give the photo round to the Rezound. Okay, I want to keep this Schmackdown a little on the shorter side. So as you know, I like to do a network download speed test. I went to my desk where I get good coverage for both Sprint and Verizon for their 4G networks, and I did a side-by-side speed test. Now they're both connected to different networks, so I can do the test at the same time. They won't interfere with each other. Here's what the network speed test showed. Here we go with a 4G download speed test for the Samsung Epic 4G Touch that's on the left, and the HTC Rezound on the right. Of course, the Epic 4G Touch is on Sprint and the Rezound is on Verizon. And here we go with the test. I'm using CNET.com's bandwidth meter, which I like. It's got good visual style, and it also is fairly conservative. And we just had the Sprint phone finish with about 8.7 megabits, and the Rezound is struggling. Now, just minutes earlier, I was getting some fantastic speeds on the Rezound, but it ended up with approximately 2 megabits. Let's go ahead and we'll try that again just for the sake of saying that we did it very well. And here we go. The Sprint phone ended up with about 8.1 megabits, and again, the Rezound is struggling. Gosh, I got some great numbers just a few minutes ago, but I'm not getting those now. And that's the nature of wireless systems like what these two phones have. Sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. And at the moment, the Rezound is not getting it. It ended up with about 1.2 megabits. Wow. I absolutely could not believe the results. Just as I mentioned in that clip, just a couple of minutes before, I did speed tests to make sure that everything was going okay, and I got much higher speeds on the Rezound. Yet I ran it twice, and the Epic 4G Touch came away with high 8s, close to 9 megabits. Now, that's not an outstanding 4G speed, but I got to tell you, if you can get 8 megabits on a cell phone, you are getting nice, fast response. You can do anything you want to do on a cell phone quickly with 8 megabits of connectivity. Again, I have had much higher speeds with the Rezound. I've had speeds in the 20 megabits with the Rezound, but not on that test. I ran it twice, and that is what I got. So I've had this Sprint phone beat a Verizon phone once before with a 4G test, and everybody said it was a fluke. Now it did it again, so maybe it's a real fluke. But I got to tell you, folks, if a Sprint phone beats the Verizon phone 3 times, it's not a fluke. That's the real world. So now, what do we have for a winner here? Well, I like both of these phones. By the way, let me mention, I should show the thickness of these two phones, because one of the things about the Epic 4G Touch is that it is a very thin phone. Now take a look at that. Look at how much thicker the Rezound is than the Epic 4G Touch. So the Epic 4G Touch is a heavier phone. It feels denser in the hand. I'm not saying it's really heavy. It weighs 5.6 ounces. The Thunderbolt, for instance, weighs more than the Rezound does. So the Rezound is definitely not the heaviest phone out there, but it definitely feels more dense in the hand than the Epic 4G Touches. This weighs 5.6 ounces. This weighs 4.6 ounces, a whole ounce lighter, not to mention that it spreads the weight out over a bigger footprint. So the Epic 4G Touch feels lighter than you would even imagine from its already lightweight. Plus, I like the fact that its larger footprint works very well in a pocket. Notice how much wider it is than the Rezound. When you stick the Epic 4G Touch in a pocket, it sits in the pocket squarely, straight up. It doesn't twist around and get stuck in the bottom of the pocket where you have to dig it out. Don't you hate that when you have to dig a phone out of your pocket? So this size works for me. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, I'm sure. I'm sure other people would like this, but this size works for me. There's many, many other things I can talk about with these two phones, but I am going to wrap up this Schmackdown by declaring the HTC Rezound the winner here. It's a fairly close call, but the display quality really is outstanding compared to the merely excellent display quality you have over here on the Epic 4G Touch. The Beats audio integration with the iBeats earphones is another big plus in the favor of the Rezound. I know for a fact that the 4G speeds that you get with the Rezound in most cases are better than the 4G speeds that you get for the Sprint, but you know, in this test, the Epic 4G Touch won that. So I'm going to go ahead and declare the Rezound a close winner here. Now, there's a difference in cost, and I can very easily see that you going with the lower cost guy here, which is the Epic 4G Touch. I've been carrying both of these phones around every day for the past couple of weeks. The Epic 4G Touch I've been carrying around for more than a month, and I really like it. I'm going to continue to carry it around. I like the Rezound. As long as I can use the Rezound, I'm going to be using it on a daily basis. Their battery life seems more or less even. I like their fast 4G networks. I like the smooth, easy operation that they have. They both have excellent features. So still, the Rezound comes away the winner in this Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. And by the way, if you're looking for either of these two phones, why don't you take a look on Wirefly? Wirefly is the US's largest online retailer of cell phones, and we got there for a reason. We provide great customer service and terrific prices. So take a look at Wirefly before you buy. Anyway, I'm Bob Kovacs here at Wirefly. Thanks for watching.